For those who saw my review of Spider-Man, my main criticisms were the bland characters, the cookie-cutter plot, the shallow romance, and the villain. These were the things that prevented it from being a great film. Spider-Man 2 manages to take elements from the first movie, obviously as it's a sequel, but it also manages to stand strong on its own. I'd even advise someone who hasn't seen the first movie to go ahead and watch this one straight away. The opening credits for this movie is my go-to example when I tell people that you can do a new continuity in a superhero franchise without an origin movie. Spidey's origin is summed up in the first 3 minutes of the movie, and because of this, the movie isn't weighed down by setup. We can just jump right into the story. And after all, if you want to get the audience's attention, you need a hook from the get-go, and if you spend too long setting things up, things are going to get boring. After all, this origin sum up in the opening credits is how a reboot should work. Unless the origin is a new story worth telling, there's nothing wrong with summing it up right at the beginning. Spider-Man 2 is the reason I will defend Tobey Maguire to my grave. He's a great actor in this film. Here we actually have a Peter Parker who's a character, and it doesn't feel inconsistent with the first one, as we simply didn't get to know him much in the first movie. Here Tobey is given a deep and fleshed out character, and he just owns this movie. Whether he's exactly like his comic book counterpart or not, this incarnation of Peter Parker is a solid thumbs up for me. This time we really get to understand the psychology of Peter's character, how he does what he does for responsibility, his guilt towards Uncle Ben, wanting to live a life of his own, and wanting to do what's right. He struggles with figuring out who he is and why he does what he does. Spider-Man 2 is ultimately a coming-of-age story. Peter is really struggling to juggle being Spider-Man and living a normal life. All his friends, teachers and bosses think that he can't be counted on and isn't dependable. He continues being Spider-Man, but his heart just isn't in it. Every time he saves someone, he doesn't really get much out of it, and the Bugle will always spotlight him as the villain, regardless of the good he does. He tries to be friends with Mary Jane, but he keeps disappointing her by not showing up at her play, and again this reinforces the idea that he can't be counted on. Eventually it reaches the point where he's miserable, and his powers start to fade away. Soon afterwards he realises that they're going completely. So what does he do? He quits. He stops being Spider-Man. And aside from the awesome fact that this resembles when he did this in the comics, everyone can relate to this. We've all reached a point where we're trying to do some good, but we're not getting anything out of it. So we say, you know what? What's the point? Forget it. This could easily come across as Peter being selfish, but it's written in a way that you root for him to be happy. He decides to have a life of his own when he's told that everyone has a choice, so he quits. And then things actually change for the better. He's getting good grades, he's showing up everywhere and being reliable, but something's wrong. Every time he comes across someone in danger or sees police cars drive past him, he feels the need to help, but instead he ignores it. In the end, through his talks with Aunt May and his acting on responsibility, he becomes Spider-Man again willingly, and not because of guilt, but because of the responsibility that Uncle Ben taught him about. The villain this time is Doc Ock, but he's been turned from the plain old evil villain from the comics into a relatable bad guy with dementia. One thing I really like is that he never actually goes for Spider-Man for stupid reasons. In fact, he only ever purposely goes after Spider-Man once. All Octavius wants to do is finish his experiment, as it was his life's dream, and after losing his wife it's all he has left. The first time he and Spidey meet, he's robbing a bank to buy parts he needs for his experiment.
Here's your change!
And people say Tobey wasn't funny. The second time, he makes a deal with Harry Osborn, we'll get to him later, that if he brings Spider-Man to him alive, then he'll give him the tritium he needs to power his experiment. And the third time they fight is because Spider-Man is going to stop him putting the whole city in jeopardy. I really like how he never goes after Spider-Man for revenge. He actually has motives, and Spidey just keeps getting in his way to reach his goal. I especially like the fact that they meet before all the shit goes down, where Peter's writing a paper on Otto and Otto is nearing his experiment. We get to see a little bit of that teacher-student aspect that we otherwise would have got with Dr. Kurt Connors, but I like that they do get to befriend each other before he becomes the bad guy. This really helps with the climax. Otto grows from a villain to a hero because they didn't have a fist fight. Peter took off his mask to talk to him. They're two men of science who believe in very similar things, and Peter takes both what Aunt May taught him and what Otto taught him and uses them to wake him up and make him see that what he's doing is wrong. Both grow as characters in this film, and they really are what makes Spider-Man 2 different from the ones that came before them. Harry Osborn's character arc is a little different here because, unlike Peter and Doc Ock, he refuses to change. In a way, he doesn't have an arc, but this is done on purpose. When Otto's experiment fails, the only thing that Harry has left is his hatred for Spider-Man. I really like that he takes off Peter's mask, and when this could have been a really bad scene, they made it work very well. And I absolutely love where his character is heading by the end of the movie. Of course, we all know how this turned out in Spider-Man 3, but nevertheless, Harry was perfectly set up to be a worthy villain. So we do have some solid written characters here, but we also have some truly great action. The action actually serves the movie well as it drives the story forward. I love the fight on the buildings and I adore the train fight. Both prove how cinematic a superhero Spidey is, and it finds ways to make Spidey use his powers in really creative ways. There's even little things that make this fight really believable, like this. Look how he webs onto the train. He's accounting for the velocity he smashed through the window and the gravity. You're not exactly meant to analyse it like this, but I love how smart the fight choreography is here. If I have any problems with this scene, it's that Doc Ock is made a bit too invincible for me. Like, I know that Spider-Man pulls his punches, but Doc Ock is an ordinary human being, whereas Spider-Man has enhanced strength. I mean, the dude falls from a building onto a moving train, and he's okay? Nitpicking aside, this is definitely one of the best superhero fights in film. I'd advise people to buy the extended edition of this film, as you do get some more thrilling action in the fight scenes that were probably cut out for time in the final cut of the film. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson is again hilarious, and I cannot get enough of him in this movie.
But could you pay me in advance?
You serious?
I love how he keeps firing Peter and then hiring him back a second later throughout the film.
You're fired. Parker, hello. You're fired. Where were you? Photographing squirrels? You're fired.
Chief, the planetarium party.
Oh, right. You're unfired. I need you. Come here.
This is also something I only really noticed when I watched the movie once again for this review, but the lighting is so much better than the first one. The tone is a little warmer, however the movie doesn't shy away from the adult themes like I feel it did with the first one. I've always thought that part of what makes a great film is being able to notice new things every time you rewatch it. Like this tiny bit, it only lasts for a second, but I love this. That look between Peter and Robbie. It resembles Robbie knowing his secret identity from the comics, and even though it's only a second, I love it. I also think that there's some suggestion that Aunt May knows he's Spider-Man as well, as if she's pieced it all together since he told her the truth about Uncle Ben's murder. Otherwise, why would she have given him that speech about heroes? Which, by the way, is my favourite scene in the movie. And what makes it better is that it's left up to interpretation. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. And it's what you personally take away from the movie that leaves it up to you. If you want to know what I think she does. And this is also a scene that feels like Aunt May has jumped off the page into the movie. So are there any bad points about the movie? Well, of course, no movie's perfect. I've got to say that I could do without the hospital scene. It feels like a major tone shift from the light-hearted Spider-Man movies to the gruesome horror movies. And I get that Sam Raimi is known for his Evil Dead trilogy, so his many fans may like this, but for me it interrupts the tone and quite frankly is too dark a scene for this movie. I could also do without this bit. This bit.
It's a web. Go, Spidey, go!
This cut. And I'm sure there are one or two more things to find issues with. However, a lot of people make this movie out to be incredibly goofy, and quite frankly, I don't think that's very fair because there's a difference between goofy and lighthearted. Yeah, okay, there are one or two tiny moments that are done to get a laugh out of you for how silly it's being, but I think the film takes itself seriously for the most part, and it does genuinely try and succeed at giving its audience an emotional response to the characters and the story. I mean, people still like to bash it regardless just for being lighthearted, but I feel it's the same issue I have with the people who didn't like The Avengers because it was, quote, for children. When you get past the warm tone and the fact that it embraces its silliness, there are a lot of themes and messages to take away from the movie. So, in the end, I'd say that whether you're a casual fan of Spider-Man, an everyday moviegoer, or even someone who likes the Dark Knight trilogy, you will still like this movie. Its fun, deep, fleshed out characters will have you getting emotionally invested, while the action will thrill you beyond belief. It resembles the comics very well, and I think that of all his films, Spider-Man 2 understands why we love the character and the world he lives in the most. It is the definition of a sequel done right. It takes everything that didn't work in the first Spider-Man movie and makes them not only the main focuses but makes them the best parts, in turn making Spider-Man 2 a near perfect superhero movie and on all accounts everything a Spider-Man movie should be. Cheers for watching guys, and as always if you like this video you can subscribe to my channel.